Mike,
Hello?
are you there?
Yeah, I've been waiting since the beginning of the show.
And now you're at the end of the show. I
Oh,
apologize.
Oh,
AT&T loves you, man.
I went to the line that you were supposed to be on and got no answer, so I got sidetracked by Tom.
yeah, they
and I
said they had a
apologize.
technical difficulty or something.
I apologize for that. If you want to, I can save you a slot next week and start right at the top of the show, or you can just email or ask it offline or whatever.
All right, I think I can do that next week then.
Or you can shoot us your question now. We're on the post-show.
I can do that too, I mean.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
Sorry
right, so
to keep you waiting.
basically it's, well, I've been watching you guys for a while now, probably a year ago. When I was 16, I saw Freaker on YouTube, and he had a clip. But I have a syllogism I want to present. It defends theism, deism, pantheism, all those kind of
Okay.
things. I want to give a history of metaphysics first, though, because I think it's relevant.
Okay.
So basically we have Plato with the world of the forms, right? And he says, this reality is not as important as the forms. And Aristotle comes by and says, no, it's actually this reality is good, and we inductively reason to understand it. And that's the former one. And then Descartes comes by and says, well, you had it a quarter right. Really the only way we can interpret reality is by causal relations, right? And this is where, modern philosophy, and we get the scientific method from this, and it's all good. But the problem is where we get Immanuel Kant, and he says, the best we can do is interpret reality as it shows up to us through the senses, but we don't have no way of knowing if these interpretations of reality are grounded with necessity. Right,
Yes.
so can you accept that first premise?
That's right. We could be
Wait.
brain in a vat.
You're stating what your first premise was, and it's the history of metaphysics?
No, it's Immanuel Kant, transcendental idealism. The theory of transcendental idealism.
No, I don't necessarily buy into Kant or dualism.
So
But if you're making it, restate exactly what you're using as the first premise, and I can tell you.
right. The best we can do is interpret reality as it shows up to us through the senses, but we have no way of knowing if these interpretations match up with reality, with necessity.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
We could be
You'll buy
brain in
that,
a
okay.
vat, and somebody could be playing a big prank on us. That's right.
Actually, with one exception, I wouldn't necessarily assert that this is the best. It just may be the best we're aware of at the moment.
Okay. Point 2. There is no inherent value or necessity in any metaphysical interpretation.
Sure. I'd say there's no inherent value. Well, can we sub intrinsic, I guess, in anything? Interpretation,
Yes.
statement, life, whatever.
Yeah, like in the universe, there's no inherent value, right?
Okay.
So therefore, saying one metaphysical interpretation is more necessary or valuable than another is just wishful thinking.
No. To say that there's no inherent value in any particular metaphysical position does not mean that there is no value in that position that can be asserted to assess which one I consider to be more valuable.
But that value is asserted by humans.
Yeah.
It's not.
All value is asserted by humans.
Exactly. That's the point.
Okay, but to say something has no intrinsic value, and to say that it has no value, is to commit a category error because we're talking about two entirely different things.
Those are different things.
The dollar bill that's in my wallet has no inherent value or intrinsic value. It has value because we give it value.
You can burn it.
All right.
But that's still something we do to it.
Yeah.
It's not intrinsically more valuable, but it's definitely. You would agree that it's definitely not necessary. It's not grounded with necessity, right?
That's what not necessary.
Any one metaphysical interpretation of reality.
No. One metaphysical interpretation of reality is necessarily accurate if we're making the assumption that there is any reality at all.
But none of them are grounded with necessity. We know there has to be one that's true, but we have no way of knowing because of the appearance and reality problem, the mind-body problem.
We have no way of knowing. I don't agree with that either. We're constantly in the process of figuring out which ones are more reliable than others. We may not necessarily ever get to the one true one.
I contend that. My first premise said that we have no way of knowing if these interpretations match up with reality with necessity. And that's my conclusion, pretty much. but just adding.
Oh, all right. All right. Then I apologize. I'm going to back up. On the premise, my assumption was that when you said that we have no way of determining if these match up with reality, you were talking about like a brain in a vat type of, is the reality that I experience the actual one true reality?
Not necessarily just the brain in the vat example, but
Sure,
any
any of those thought experience. And
Yeah.
on that level, I'd say, yeah, Kant's right, that we cannot tell anything about an ultimate reality, for example.
Yeah, grounded
However,
with necessity.
we can say about the reality we experience. And yes, it's necessarily circular to some extent, but like I talked about in the show, I wouldn't lump senses together in that way.
So you're agreeing with the that it's not grounded with necessity, the scientific method and your basic metaphysical view.
I'm not sure that I'm agreeing with that at all.
So you're objecting then. I'm just trying to figure out where you stand so I
the
can
thing
follow on.
Sounds to me like we sort of take it on faith that our senses are telling us the truth.
No.
And we then have to choose the metaphysics based on what our senses are telling us, and that becomes
No,
No?
that's
Okay.
that's what some people have asserted, that the senses are properly basic, that we have no.
I don't claim they are. I just say we take it on faith.
That's what
We have-
properly basic means.
Okay. All right.
My position is that yes, we cannot distinguish whether or not I can't distinguish whether the reality I experience is an ultimate reality. I could be in a matrix or a brain in a vat or pick any thought experiment you want. But I do experience some reality. This is what, Descartes solved with I think, therefore I am. And within that reality, I can test the reliability of my senses. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yes, but the point is, it's an existential point. It's that it's not grounded with necessity. That's the biggest problem of metaphysics, is that we've never been able to ground them with necessity. Therefore,
Grounded to what with necessity? Because if you're saying grounded to an ultimate reality, I agree. But if you're
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
grounded to reality, the
not a
reality we
phenomenological.
experience-
I'm saying we have a phenomenological worldview where it shows up through our senses, but we have no way of knowing if these senses are actual interpretations of reality.
Well, that's where I think you're changing scope. I want to know when when you're talking about reality, are you talking about ultimate reality versus the reality I experience? Because I would hold
Ultimate
that my
reality.
senses can be demonstrably reliable within the reality that I experience.
Yes. And this goes on to a later point of, the death of the idols. We don't have any absolutes, and therefore multiple metaphysical world or views are
What do you
just
mean
as
we have no
necessary.
absolutes? We didn't ever get to any point about absolutes because
I was asking you if your metaphysical worldview was grounded with necessity to the ultimate reality, and you said no, it wasn't. So that's the death of the absolutes that Nietzsche talks about.
Okay, consider me stupid, because you're going to have to stop cross-referencing with shorthand of what Nietzsche said or what so-and-so said. And I'd rather just I'd rather just discuss what we're actually talking about, and granted in simple terms. But I do hold, as you find out if you go watch the argument with Matt Slick, that the three logical absolutes are in fact absolutes.
And we've had some debate about that.
Yeah,
are.
you can't accept that as an absolute either.
Sorry?
You can't accept that as an absolute either because of the first premise.
No, they're absolutes. The three logical
Not
absolutes.
the ultimate reality, to reality as you see it to the senses,
No.
not the ultimate reality.
No, the logical absolutes are absolute regardless of any reality, ultimate or otherwise, even if nothing exists.
I'm
I've never-
laughing because I've been in this I've been in this blender myself for a while. We go around and around and get chopped up.
It's really simple. Identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle. They are necessarily absolute in all realities, any possible reality, and the absence of reality.
Well, they don't seem to be consistent in quantum mechanics, for example.
They are in quantum mechanics. They just don't tell us anything by themselves.
Exactly. We can't.
They don't tell us anything about them. They don't tell us anything by themselves because they don't speak to specific attributes. They just say whatever is, whatever isn't, and nothing both is and isn't. They don't tell you what is meant by is or isn't. For example, in quantum mechanics, when a particle is indeterminate, it's either indeterminate or it isn't, but it's not both.
Well, for example, we can have an electron in a state and apply a magnet to it, and it will either be in a 1 or 0 state, and it will be in both of those. We have the same exact cause
No,
for the
it's not in
experiment, but we
both of
get
them.
different effects.
No, it's not in both states.
It's not in both states. No, it's either in one or the other, but the causes for the experiment are the same, irregardless.
Right. And irregardless isn't a word.
Sorry, regardless.
I used to do that all the time.
Thing here in Florida.
It's because of regardless and irrespective. It's stupid.
Yeah,
Irregardless
exactly.
should be a word, except that we don't need it. But what the point about that is quantum mechanics does not violate the logical absolutes because they don't tell you about specifics. If you define a particle as indeterminate, or any characteristic of it is indeterminate, it's either indeterminate or it's not indeterminate. Nothing could be both of those at the same time. Now, the example that I used before was all the logical absolutes do is define the ability to discern true dichotomies. Now, is true-false a true dichotomy? No. True and not true is a true dichotomy. True-false is only a true dichotomy for the limited subset of statements whose truth value can be assessed. The liar's paradox, for example, doesn't fall into that category. This statement is false. It's still either true or not true. In this case, it's not true. And false or not false. In this case, it's not false.
Okay.
But it's not both of them. All those do is set up absolutely the ability to set up true dichotomies.
Let me throw you a bone at Matt's and irritate Matt at the same time. My view is that the logical absolutes apply within a model, and they work when the model works, and they don't work when the model doesn't.
Then the logical absolutes apply within a model, or they don't apply within a model, but they don't do both or neither at the same time, which means that the logical absolutes transcend your model explanation.
That may mean that they apply in the metal sense to the model, but it doesn't necessarily mean they apply everywhere.
No, they transcend your model. They apply everywhere, all the time. I got to let you go, man, because it's people want the studio and they're wanting to go to dinner.
Okay.
Oh,
Thanks
I
a lot.
have an explanation for Zeno's paradox. Hello?
Yeah?
For Zeno's paradox?
Yeah.
I know how to explain that, actually, with science.
Well, it's an infinite sum that adds up to a finite number.
Right, but Planck's constant is a discrete function. It's not a continuum. So once you get down to Planck's constant in motion, it skips over and just goes straight to the next Planck's constant.
But Zeno didn't know that. Yep.
Well, yeah, exactly.
How inconvenient. Hey, feel free to drop me an email or call next week. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Well, what if it didn't? So what if there was no...
Yep.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Let's call it quits. Thank you, guys.
God.
Well, they worked you pretty good today, Matt.